And we have a ton of great questions that people have sent in from across the country. And once again, I want to thank all the people that are here, the architects, the owners, the construction management firms, the county commissioners and the sheriffs. I know everyone has a really busy schedule, especially with this whole COVID issue going on. But I hope you're going to find that the 3 or 4 hours that you spent today are going to be well worthwhile. And what I will tell you is when, in a couple of weeks, when the great people from the Sanders Group get this all put together, you'll be able to order up from us, for no cost, obviously, the entire webinar program so that you could show it to your people back home, or maybe the people in your county and community that you want to, if you're trying to pass a new jail referendum or whatever. So we have everybody up online. So I'm just going to kind of randomly ask these questions, and if everybody's ready, let's go with the first one. Let's go back to the fellows at Titan Door Company. Damon and Philip, the question came in, can you elaborate a little more on your ceiling and wall panel products, i.e. timetable and variety of products to come to market?
Yeah, I can jump in on a timetable and I'll let Philip handle some of the variety of products. But so ceiling panels, testing should be done in Q4 of 2020. And then writing the specs and getting that done will be a Q1 project. As far as the wall panel is concerned, we're targeting Q2 and Q3 of 2021 to follow that same suit with the testing and then spec writing and making the availability out to the market.
So at this time, we are testing our single skin ceilings in-house. So 12 gauge, solid or perforated, and 12-inch, 18, and 24-inch wide. We will start looking at the wall panels with the double skin ceilings, as Damon said, in Q2, Q3, and developing that.
Great answers, you guys. Here's a question for Mike and the guys at SteelCell. Mike, what is the time it takes from a notice to proceed to SteelCell for the duration to receive shop drawings, and what is the time it takes from the shop drawing approval to get the cells on site?
Okay, well, Joe, that's going to be really dictated by a little bit by our workload and the size and complexity of the job as far as submittals go. But I think generally we've been seeing somewhere between an average of 6 to 8 weeks on submittals. Now, when it comes to delivery, a lot of that depends on the job, the site, and the delivery method. Many times we're waiting, especially if it's design assist, as I said earlier, sometimes we're waiting months for the design to be completed. Sometimes we're, if it's a mid-rise building, we're waiting months for the site to be ready. And really the only way I can answer that question now is it's on a job to job, very specific basis. As I said earlier, we're not going to pursue a job or make a commitment on a job to make any kind of deliveries unless it fits in the schedule that we can produce. In our history, 20 years of history now, and 250, 260 jobs, we haven't left a project hanging for cells. We've adapted and worked with them. And again, I would say there's different places that the cell system can enter. It can sometimes be not a preference, but sometimes be the first thing on the slab, and sometimes it can come in much later in the project. And preferably, we like to see the roof either going on immediately after or the roof already on. And then some of that, Joe, your guys may want to talk about the install, whether it matters if the roof is there or not.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great answer, Mike. And one of the reasons that Jared Bailey, our senior project manager in the office that runs our managers here, and he also runs our field superintendents. Jared, you run into this on every project. Can you go ahead and throw some information out there?
Yeah, I think in general, most of the projects we work on, we want to try to steer towards installing the cells in a controlled environment. So the roof on, dried in, basically leaving an opening to bring the cells in. In the rare cases where we are setting without a roof on, we're going to have to spend some additional money to protect the cells until the roof is on. But yeah, like Mike said, the cells are, that's one of the advantages really is it takes it off the critical path and allows you to install, the rest of the facility, get the building enclosed prior to having the cells on site. So yeah, we definitely would prefer to have the building completely enclosed.
Great. Okay, this question is for the Granger fellows, Todd and Rob. There's actually a three-part question here from the person sent this in. Gentlemen, what was done to the size or scope of the Alpena project to make the budget? And did you have to go to using dorms versus individual cells to make that happen?
Yeah, so we did end up using turning 3 day rooms into dorm spaces. That wasn't one of the things that I hit on in my video. I think I hit on all of the bigger cost savings items that we did that affected scope on Alpena. There was obviously a litany of smaller cost savings items that were implemented, like going to smaller point of use domestic water heaters instead of a main domestic water heater in a mechanical room. But yeah, there were 3 day rooms that were converted to dorm space to help save costs and get the project within budget.
Okay, then probably the second and third part to that same question is, what was the cost per square foot of the final design? And in conjunction with that, was this project union labor, prevailing wages, or strictly non-union?
So the final construction cost for Alpena County Jail is coming in at $374 per square foot. That's construction cost. The job's not complete yet. Obviously, it'll be delivered within that budget, so potentially slightly less with contingency and general condition savings that would go back to the client. And then as far as labor requirements, there were no stipulations for any union labor or prevailing wages on that project.
Okay. Great. The next question goes out to Charles Brink. It's a two-part question again. So Charlie, the question to you is, how many components used in Brink's locking system product are made by Brink's versus ordered from a subcontractor? That's question part one. And are all parts used made in the United States?
I would say roughly 80% of all of our parts are made here. The steel is brought in raw or brass bars, and they're made and formed here by our machines. The balance of parts are castings. Those come from foundries, and we're not in the foundry business. And all of our parts are here from the USA, are made in the USA. One of our biggest sources for castings is up in Wisconsin, actually. So.
Right, that's a great answer, Charlie. The next question goes back to Mike Smith at SteelCell. Mike, during COVID, this county has been using a UVC machine to clean and sanitize their current cells. His question is, has there been any testing with the UVC machine on the polyurea coating and its effect on your cell?
Okay, we're not aware, and that question was forwarded to me a little bit ahead of time from the staff in Wisconsin. We have not, or we're not aware of any specific testing with a UVC machine. However, once the polyurea coating is cured, the whole system is cured, it is inert and non-porous. We actually treat it for UV resistance, and so my answer would be highly probable and highly likely that there's no effect. The other piece of evidence I would submit on that is we have, I think, an architect that's on the seminar today with whom we have done several cells that included a permanently mounted UV light. Now, it was protected so that the inmates wouldn't have direct vision at it, but a permanently mounted UV light to be utilized in, tuberculosis, a condition where an inmate that was incarcerated had tuberculosis. So I think it's a pretty high likelihood no, but since we have received that question, we are going to contact this coating manufacturer, Sherwin-Williams, and see if they have possibly done any specific tests. But I would not see any issue with that damaging the polyurea coating. No.
Okay, great answer, Mike. Thank you very much. The question is for Peter Graves. Peter, this comes from an architect who said, I proposed an idea to Norix to develop a detention grade, high-density plastic wheelchair over 10 years ago. Typically, how long does it take for a new idea to go from concept design to actual production, and explain the testing process and the approval process for the product?
Okay, thanks, Joe. I already answered Richard his question, but for the rest of the audience, I'll respond. Working backwards from the cycle of R&D, we try to work in a cycle of about 18 months from concept to production, and then the first article would be submitted for whatever testing would be required. As I mentioned to Richard, I recall chasing the wheelchair project. It was really a tough one for us. We weren't able to overcome the manufacturing challenges associated with moving parts and so forth. A lot of that's associated with our manufacturing process, so we just weren't able to get there on that one. Also, we've been looking into secure medical bed that's anti-self-harm, Trendelenburg position bed, and we haven't figured that one out either, but we'll continue to work to try to achieve products like that, both with the demographic changes in corrections, like in the rest of society. Inmates are getting older. Products like that certainly will be necessary, and we'll continue to strive to crack the code on those.
That's a great answer. I just want to throw out one thing, just a personal opinion from the people here at Pauly Jail. I think one of the things that separates the manufacturers in this webinar and on our team today from others in the industry is a lot of them are family-owned businesses. They take their business very seriously, but you'll notice you hear a lot of them talking about they're taking some of the profits that they're making and they're investing it back into new machinery and equipment that you saw at Brink's plant, Titan's plant, SteelCell's plant, Norix, and I think that's one of the reasons that you're going to see the manufacturers on this team lead the industry and the innovation of new products and technologies as we move forward. So that was just a little bit of a plug I threw out there. But anyway, we have more questions for the guys at Titan Steel Door Company. This refers to your security ceilings. Okay, so it says your security ceilings are being added to the company profile of products. What levels of security will be available? And are there specifications available now? And what is different or better about Titan ceilings versus what is currently being used in the industry?
Good question, Joe. So, right now, single skin ceilings are being tested, and we have a spec that we're developing as we go. As far as what's different with the Titan ceilings for the customer and the end use is we'll be able to do cut to length lines for sizes to speed up the field installation for any project.
Okay, great. Charlie Brink, we have another question for you. This refers to sliding door fire ratings. What are the limitations on fire rating for kick released and/or motorized sliders?
This is an interesting question. And our devices are fire rated. The limitation is the width of the door, 52.5 inches wide by 81.5 inches high. That's the main limitation on fire ratings. So,
Great answer, Charlie. We have a question for the Willoughby fellas. Either one of you take it away. Are those Willoughby fixtures that were shown in the normalized cell and in Mike Smith's steel cell?
Yes, yeah, there were specifically 2 fixtures that were there, and they are unique. They were developed for the normalized cell. They both happen to be powder-coated stainless. The toilet was a powder-coated stainless detention grade toilet. The lav was a little bit different in that it was designed for ligature resistance, and also specifically the architect and SteelCell wanted to see something that was a little softer approach. So we integrated the use of stainless and a solid surface deck specifically on that fixture to set it apart from the more institutional feel of a typical stainless fixture. And in the next gen, if you will, of normalized cell construction, we believe we're going to be introducing more color, possibly some other features that, as Mike from SteelCell and Peter from Norix talked about earlier, contribute to a softer environment. The need for less institutional feel has increased dramatically over past, I would say, 2 to 3 years. So we're excited about it. We like doing new things like that. We're always willing to try something new. And if there's an idea that somebody wants us to try, we're willing to do that too.
Okay, another great answer. We are back to the fellows up in Lansing, Rob and Todd. Question for you. Recently, as a construction management firm, either at-risk or agency, what have you seen as the biggest problems owners are facing when considering a new correctional project?
Well, in my opinion, I think some of the biggest problems that they've been facing is trying to come up with a preliminary project budget that kind of matches the scope that they're looking at. And so, I think a lot of clients do homework themselves. They try to put together information they may read from how much a project costs per square foot, reach out to other people. Sometimes they do a good job in putting that together. Sometimes they get too far down the road, though, with some bad information. Kind of highlighting back to the Alpena County video that we showed earlier today, they had some misinformation. They got down a road, pretty far that hurt them. And so, our advocacy is always, again, just like, we talked about the teamwork in this group, is to team with clients as well. So for anybody thinking about a correctional project, we're happy to share our benchmark pricing with people and talk to them. We could turn around some ideas for what total projects are going to cost them. One thing we talked about construction costs and cost per square foot. There's other project costs that clients need to consider as well. Soft costs on the job, meaning the amount you pay for an architect and furnishings and other costs associated outside of construction might be as much as 20 to 30%. And so you really got to look at the project holistically, and that's what I think commissioners look at. That's what they make their decisions based on, is the overall project cost. And so, again, we're happy to help.
That's a great answer. I think I would just like to throw out on what we've seen in the last 2 or 3 years here at Pauly Jail, working with construction management firms, I won't say completely across the country, but through a wide swath of the country. And you're right. I think the number one issue that keeps coming up is going to be the cost of the facility. How are we going to pay for it? What can we actually afford and design? That's why I think the design assist process that you guys talked about earlier, that we kind of believe in, works, because I think if you get all the key subcontractors on board and you're all sitting down in the room and you're on the same team working with the architect and the owner to try to cut cost out of the building without shopping the numbers and cutting out quality, I think that's one of the most valuable tools, and I know we're using it on several projects right now, Jared, and right, that are working very well?
Yeah, quite well.
Okay, we've got a couple more questions. Let's go to, this comes in for Mike Smith and for Jared Bailey. It's a joint question. Mike, to you first. On an average, how many cells can SteelCell produce in a typical day? And Jared, consequently, second part of that, on an average, how many cells can Pauly Jail set in a day?
Okay, I'll start, and of course, we make single bed, double bed, 4-bed, sometimes even larger, and sometimes much more complex than just a cell like a control room. But if I were to go to a bread and butter 80 square foot cell, 2 bunks, the desk and seat associated with it, and pretty much standard 7.5 foot by 12.5 foot dimensions. We have produced as many recently as over 30 a day. I would say on a typical basis, we're going to be in the mid-20s. Then as we start adding some options like showers and cells or 4-person cells, those numbers reduce as far as overall quantity. But with the improvements we've made in our manufacturing facilities and expansions that we've done, we're reaching those type of numbers on a pretty regular basis.
Great. Jared, you want to answer the second half of that question?
As far as production or installation quantities per day, so on average, like Mike said, the cells come in different sizes and shapes, different difficulty level for installation, but we're averaging on most projects blended, it's probably 24 cells a day. For a complicated project, it might go down to 16 cells per day. Past performance, I think the highest rate we ever got was around 40 cells in a 10-hour day. That was on a large several hundred cell project where we had ideal trucking and situation set up for the project. But generally, the larger the project, the more cells we can get to in a day. But on average, we're probably 20 to 24 cells a day.
Okay, this question isn't really addressed to anyone. I guess we could all kind of chime in and answer it. I guess it might be addressed more for Pauly Jail, but the question is, for publicly bid projects that require competitive bidding, what is the best way to package detention components to ensure that the customer gets the integrated solution that they need? I would take the lead on that if nobody minds. I think the best way to put together a delivery package for a correctional facility is you ought to put all the components that are going to be considered a part of the security package together at one. And as for us, that would include steel cells, the security hollow metal doors and frames from Titan, the detention furnishings, the security glass, the security locks, security door controls, and then you include that. You would want to make sure that's included by a detention equipment contractor that actually installs their own products. And the reason I say that is you saw today that you have with the SteelCell, you have the Willoughby water management system that can save hundreds of thousands of dollars over the lifetime of a 20-year bond. You also have this cost savings that Todd showed you from Alpena County on the rear chase modular door controls from Accurate. If you start breaking apart the bid packages and taking those products out, putting them over here, putting them over there, putting the door controls on the electrical or bidding it as prime, you lose all those efficiencies of scale and you lose all the cost benefits and savings, all right? And the other part of that question is, how do you get past the public competitive bidding laws? Well, actually, I still have a ruling from 1974 that says that, counties have the right to give their customers and clients what's in the best needs of that community, and you can have sole source bidding with sole source products. That being said, I think the best way to handle it is probably use a pre-qualification method for, I would use it for security hollow metal, I would use it for security hardware, certainly electronics, the SteelCell, and the detention equipment contracts, because those are the key components that are going to make up your correctional project. And if you look across the country, if you look at the jobs that have had problems and issues, it normally is not the electrical contractor that failed that caused the problem. It's normally not the plumber. It's not usually the mason. It normally a lot of times falls back on the whole detention equipment contracting team. So that would be my answer. Does anybody else on the panel have another thought about that?
Yeah, I think to add to what Joe said would be, A big part is getting the detention equipment package set up correctly, but then also all of the other trade packages. So, a jail project's pretty unique, and you want to have your construction manager educated and educate you on the other components for electrical, mechanical, plumbing, all of the other key members of the team that tie into the systems that we're providing for the facility. So definitely want to make sure your construction manager's on board and educated with assigning the rest of the packages.
Go ahead, Craig.
Yeah, one other thing I would throw out there is that, and we run into this with some counties very recently, is that the fixtures and the electronic controls for those fixtures a lot of times are in the SteelCell's package, which is supplied through Pauly Jail. There are also fixtures and electronics that are outside of the cells, part we call the non-modular part of the job. And a lot of times, if you're not careful, a plumber doing things just the way they normally do things may or may not match up those fixtures and possibly even the electronics with the same brand. So then you get into a situation where you're mixing and matching things, and that makes it harder as the facility ages, the maintenance staff has to maintain multiple systems, and it's just a tougher circumstance. So in a number of cases recently, fixtures and electronics for the non-modular spaces have been carried by the detention equipment contractor. That's one way to skin the cat and make sure the owner gets what they want and gets the same brand throughout the job.
Okay, great answers, and we have another question for, let's see, this goes back to SteelCell. Okay, Mike, how many steel cells can you stack on top of each other, and can the steel cells be fabricated for structural support of other elements of the building?
Okay, so generally speaking, the design of the building and fire exit distances are going to control that before you get into what the structural limitations of the cell are. What we typically see is that the designs need to have a certain number of feet that are allowed for an inmate to exit that fire containment zone or area of the building, and that typically would mean within the floor of a building construction, that typically is going to be one tier of cells, an upper and lower tier of cells in the mezzanine. Structurally speaking, our cell design actually gets stronger the more you stack, according to our third-party structural engineer. However, to reap some of the benefits of utilizing the steel cells, as Jared talked earlier about not being on critical path, the primary way the cells are used would be independent of the building structure. When we start to hold up the rest of the building, you introduce a lot of things that aren't typically detention related, as far as how to design a cell, like wind loads and snow loads and the loads on the structure. So best practice, best usages of the steel cell are usually to be independent of the building structure. And we have not seen, we see several older designs that were there before NFPA 13 and a lot of things were developed. We see some of the old typical walk around cell blocks where you see a bunch of cells stacked up the center of the building. We just don't see that in design anymore, and that's usually because of the requirements for, fire protection and the length of exit distances from those areas. So we're really not engaging in any design discussions where we hold up building structure, and I'm not really seeing any designs that will go forward that I think are going forward that have more than a double tier of cells. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. All right, TJ, you must have given a brilliant presentation, because I haven't hardly gotten any questions for you, but I do have one, okay? Can you please explain with a dollar amount, the cost savings that you guys, Accurate's experienced, probably in conjunction with Pauly Jail, on the rear chase modular controls, savings over if we had done them in the standard way with the electrician pulling the conduit and wire versus using the modular controls. And I guess I would probably throw on there, I know we have probably 6 or 7 or 8 actually cost-saving numbers that we could throw out there. Do you have those that you and Jared can present to the people out in the audience?
Yeah, we do, because we've done the cost analysis on several other projects. And recently we did a job in Georgia, and the net savings per cell was just over $3,200 per cell. And that cell and that savings was, obviously significant. Wayne County is another project which had a tremendous amount of savings over the course of that entire project. I believe we're approaching $5,500 a cell. So, and that's the net, that's, the total savings. That doesn't take into consideration the other elements, which are similar to, the saving of schedule and, that critical path that we've already talked about. So hopefully that answers the question.
How's that? All right, Jared, you want to answer the second part of that question?
Yeah, I mean, we regularly engage in design assist projects here, and that means working with the electrical contractors. So everybody's numbers are out in the open. A lot of the construction managers we work with, and probably watching today, can vouch for it that, they see the cost, and they it's an added cost for us, but it's a reduction for their scope. And they see the net savings. It's right there. So it's pretty much in black and white. And it's really an added value for schedule is probably one of the bigger things that people miss. Just a reduction in underground raceway and wire pull after the fact on site. In a jail project, the electrician's generally the one that's got the bulk of the scope and probably the last one to finish. So as much work as you can get done ahead of time, the better. So that's my opinion on it. I mean, you're saving more than just the cost per cell. It's schedule, managing risk, all of those things combined.
That's a great question and an answer. And we have the guys from from Granger Construction on there. And I think I want to throw maybe the end of this question back to you guys. Now, TJ and Jared just addressed the cost, per cell and everything else. Todd, how many months of construction do you think that's saved with using modular controls versus if you had walked into the end of the job and we had the day rooms with the 8,000 pounds of spaghetti out there with the wire and the conduit, and then talk about what the general conditions are, cost per month on a project of that size?
So it's largely dependent on the design of the facility and the electrician's plan for roughing. For instance, Jared mentioned underground roughing. So when you're running underground roughing, you're talking PVC conduit, which is much less expensive than EMT versus cable tray. So a lot of the answer comes to the design of the facility, the electrician's plan for routing conduit and pulling wire, and also distance to the head end equipment room. That's another factor that really plays into this. So I think that on Alpena, it was definitely it was a month for sure that was saved in using the modular controls that was specific to that project. And I mentioned earlier on the cost savings. We did this analysis on Alpena. And in that instance, I know that the savings was $2,500 per cell on that particular project, exclusive of general conditions, which typically runs about $14,000 a month for general conditions costs that would be added into that savings of $2,500 per cell.
Great. I hope that answers that question for everybody out there. This question now goes back to Titan Steel Door, Damon and Phillip. We have used stainless steel doors and frames in showers and wet locations in previous projects. Those products are less available than they used to be. Do you manufacture these? And if not, what would you recommend for architects to get a comparable product that doesn't rust?
Well, to say that we've looked at that extensively would be a false statement, but we have looked at how do we enter in stainless into our facilities to control it from a cross-contamination with the carbon that we use on the hot roll P&O and on the galvanneal. One of the challenges we face on that is if we just introduce that into our process, handling and equipment and different things that would need to be cleaned to ensure that the end product is exactly what they're asking for, meaning no contamination, doesn't really fit us well at this time. We have definitely talked about different ways to coat the product, whether it be powder coated, post coating, whether it be a galvanized or anything like that, that would at least extend the life. But we have also looked at other ways that other products that are in the automotive world or anything like that, but we haven't been able to find anything that allows us to construct doors in the method that we have currently. But I'm sure there's coatings out there, and we would be more than happy to run trials or samples or anything like that to help eliminate that problem in the future.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think that I'll just share our experience with stainless steel doors at wet locations, and calling it a stainless steel detention door is kind of a misnomer. So it's pretty much impossible to build a detention rated stainless steel door that also has the same grain finish that you would be looking for on a commercial level. So if you want a stainless steel door and be detention grade, it's probably not going to look like one that you might see at a commercial level. Just the amount of welding and structural components inside of a 2-inch detention hollow metal door is a lot different than commercial grade. Some of the alternatives out there would be the composite doors. We've been seeing a lot of that on a lot of larger projects for shower doors. So that, and then continual maintenance on site, use a A60 galvanneal product for the door, and then make sure the owner's painting it and maintaining it on site, so after the facility's in occupancy.
Great. Okay, we have a question here for the Willoughby fellows. 2 questions, actually. First question, can you discuss the options for colored powder coating available for stainless steel fixtures for more of a normalized cell?
Yeah, Joe, I'll take that one. So any of our stainless steel plumbing fixtures we can powder coat. As you saw in the normalized cell, we got 2 of them in there that were powder coated white. Again, being that we're in several other markets, we do outdoor parks and rec fixtures, so outdoor drinking fountain showers and such. And so we do have a wide range of or wide variety of colors that we can paint any correctional fixture. So based off what the customer needs are. If it's more of a mental health institution rather than a correctional institution, we do offer fixtures that are made out of solid surface. So solid surface, we cast that in our plant. It's not stainless, it's more of a cast corian material. So it gives a little bit softer feel, has a little bit more depth to the color of it. You actually have speckles and different shades in there, so it's not one solid color. So we do have a couple different options to go down that road.
Okay, great. Second question, I'll give this over to Craig. Craig, can you discuss the water controls available and cost savings realized for county jails? And the question, part A of that is there a certain minimum size of facility that the project needs to be for the economy of scale to make sense for water management?
I think it could be valuable on just about any size facility, and there are different levels of water management. You can take something that's a very simple dedicated fixture controller that's non-networked, and you can limit flushes, or you can limit shower run times, or you can give the some sense of control on an individual fixture basis on 1, 10, 100, or 1,000, I suppose. Our network systems, where there is an operator workstation that is tied via cabling, That might be a little different scenario in that it's unusual to see that on, let's just say, less than 5 to 10 fixtures. You're typically wanting to network together a wing, a pod, a building, and in some cases even multiple buildings from a network standpoint. The cost impact of the fixture-specific controllers that I mentioned first, they're lower cost, they're lower function, but they still provide a good benefit to the owner. The network systems, when you get into those, yes, they're more expense, but what they bring you is the best in control and monitoring of the function of the fixtures. And that's really hard to beat. I mean, there's facilities that we're involved in one right now where it's a large facility that due to budget concerns, they went completely pneumatic on all the valving, pneumatic controls on all the valving for the toilets, for the lavatories and for the showers. And what they're doing now in a year-old facility is coming back in and replacing year-old product with brand-new electronic controls because they found some additional money a year later and they just think it's necessary. And what we're seeing, what's progressing in the industry is that I would say maybe 3-4 years ago, maybe 30 to 40% of the projects had some form of electronic water management on it. Today, I would say 75%. It's become much more mainstream. Architects, many of who are tuned in today and that we know well, are including it as more of a base bid, if you will, in their offering. And they don't want to see it as a alternate that could get V'd out and then the owner wishes he had it later. So.
Great answer, Craig. All right, we are down to our last couple of questions for the webinar. This question goes back out to Charlie Brink. Charlie, discuss the security differences between selecting an 8-inch 50-20 Brink's lock versus a 2-inch Brink 30-20 lock, including appropriate uses for each and price differences.
That's a very commonly asked question in our little neck of the woods. The narrow jam lock is, well, first of all, as far as impact security, both are equal. Both are, have been tested by third parties, ASTM, grade 1, tested for both. With the narrow jam lock, we recommend that the frame is reinforced internally where the lock pocket is, but both are ASTM grade 1. So from an impact perspective, they're identical, and that's not intuitive. Most people think bigger is better. The advantage of the narrow jam lock is, from your earlier portion of the webinar, it's more of a normative look. It's a softer architectural feel to it. And with the current design trends in prisons, we feel this is a pretty slick solution to give that normative feel to the cell. It's an integral part of it. The wide jam lock, it's our model 50-20. It's very durable. It lasts a long time. And so it really comes to, and you can utilize with the 50-20 a mogul cylinder, which is a larger key, as opposed to the narrow jam lock uses a builder's hardware cylinder, which is the typical key that we conventionally think of. Those are the main differences. You utilize 24-volt motors on both. They both have strong retraction. In fact, our model 3520-600 is the strongest retraction force on the market, I believe. I know. And so those are the major differences. As far as cost, except for the 3520-600, which is a proprietary product, it's a little more expensive. They're similar costs. The model 3520-300 and our model 50-20 are very similar costs. The much more labor intensive for assembling for our narrow jam locks. It's more of a Swiss watch, if you will. But you do gain savings with the narrow jam over the wide jam with less with less hollow metal utilized. And if you have space concerns in your design of your facility, the narrow jam provides less space requirements, which is an advantage of a narrow jam over the wide jam. But it really comes down to the architectural design and look of the facility, what you choose between the two. Unless you have an owner who just wants bigger is better, and sometimes you can't fight that. And you want the bigger key, you want the bigger lock, and you think it's just better. And so we'll give that to them if they want. But we do offer both, and there are minimal trade-offs. That's counterintuitive, besides the size of the key.
All right, great answer, Charlie. All right, one last question. I'm going to put this out to Mr. Smith down in North Georgia. Can you discuss the advancements at SteelCell in the acoustics of your cells over those that you would have installed, say, 8 to 10 years ago?
Sure. I want to harken you back to some that you heard from Peter Graves regarding the furniture, but a lot of things in the world of sound attenuation, or how does the cell sound, have to do with multiple things. It has to do with the size, the amount of area that is flat, how much glazing is exposed. One of the biggest sound reflectors is the glass or the glazing. I think on a scale of what absorbs sound and what reflects sound, the closer you get to the smooth like water, the more the sound echoes or bounces off of. And when you get to textures and fabrics, the more the sound is absorbed. So what we try to do with the cells, we try to put a texture on the wall itself that helps break up those sound waves. The makeup of the wall on the non-inmate side of the wall, we've advanced from a rather loose feel or semi-rigid mineral rock wool and cement mixture to high density foams, both open and closed cell usually on the side walls of the cell, and open cell foams in the ceiling in front and rear wall of the cell. And that helps deaden the sound of the wall itself. Then, when we're able to add things like plastic furniture, even things like shower curtains, and then the mattresses and blankets that might go along, pillows that might go along with the blanket, all these surfaces absorb sound waves. But the main things that we have done with our product is changing the way we insulate the walls and this texture that we're putting on the walls to try to move it as far away from a flat glass-like finish. Many of the designs that we need to introduce light, introduce some more glazing, and there's very little we can do to glazing itself and make it effective and for vision without having it be a really flat surface, and that's gonna drive a lot of echo or sound waves to bounce off of it. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, great. Well, that is the conclusion of today's Fall 2020 Correctional Webinar. I'd like to bring everybody back up on the screen, all the presenters that were here today, including the Willoughby guys here in my conference room, and Jared Bailey. And thank everybody for the information and the technology and the videos you put together. Thanks for the great question and answers. I also want to take a moment and thank everyone who has logged on for the 3.5-hour webinar today from basically across the country. We hope you walked away with a little bit more knowledge and information than you had prior to this. Hopefully you'll have now some great contacts at these manufacturing companies that you can reach out to individually. And certainly if you need to get this video of the whole webinar, maybe use it for your own webinar at your counties or whatever, just let us know, and probably in 2 or 3 weeks, the Sanders Group will have that all done. We'll have it put up on our website, and you'll be able to go ahead and link to it from there. And once again, that's it from here at Pauly Jail World Headquarters. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day.